morning. Welcome to Chalice Unitarian Universalist Congregation. We are a community of diverse beliefs and experiences, nurturing the liberal religious spirit and united by our desire to grow in love and in service. Whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever your life's journey, you are welcome here. Whether you gather with us every Sunday, once or twice a year, are returning after an absence, or are with us this morning for the first time, we are glad you are here. I'm Reverend Sharon Wiley, Chalice's minister. Our worship musician this morning is our music director, Tim McKnight. Welcome to this online worship service. Welcome to those of you watching live using Zoom on Sunday morning, and welcome to those of you watching the recording of this service later on Chalice's YouTube channel. For those of us using Zoom on Sunday morning, please notice on your menu, there's a button that says CC Live Transcript. This is Zoom's closed captioning service, and you can click on it to hide the subtitle if you don't want to see it, or you can show the subtitle if you want that function on. You're in control of whether that is on or off on your screen. Also on your menu is the chat button. For those of you who like to use the chat during the service, which you're welcome to do, please be sure that when you post that you've used the little blue menu there to select everyone. If you only chat with the host and panelists, that only comes to me, and I may not see your message during the service, and I may not notice that it was only a message to me also. So we want to use the chat to talk with everyone. So if you haven't had a hug this morning, if you're needing or wanting a hug, give yourself a big hug of hello and welcome. If you share space with other people who would welcome hugs, maybe hug them too. Finally, I want to especially welcome those of you who are newcomers at Chalice this morning. I know that finding a congregation online is a new experience towards the end of the service. I'll put a link in the chat box that you can follow for adding your name to our email list. Our weekly email is the best way to get information about our groups and activities, most of which are still happening online. We are starting to have some meal gatherings in person and starting to have some in-person gatherings. So you'll want to make sure that you are on our email list. Now, let's take a breath together.
Good morning. According to the Library of Congress, the first permanent Euro-American settlements began a pattern of displacement and land appropriation of indigenous people that continued until the 20th century. In this region that we consider home, the Kumeyaay first lived here for over 10,000 years and were the people who greeted the Spanish when they first sailed into the San Diego harbor in 1542. With this awareness, we acknowledge that Chalice is located on the stolen, tribal, ancestral homeland of the Apai, which is part of the Kumeyaay Nation, and the Payamkawichem Nation. This acknowledgement reminds us that we live in a history-driven present and that we need to be intentional with this land and with the people indigenous to the land. Mary Lyons from the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe states, "When we, the indigenous people, talk about land, land is part of who we are. It is a mixture of our blood, our past, our current, and our future." According to the research done with Reclaiming Native Truth, 40% of Americans do not believe that indigenous people still exist in the U.S. Chalice hopes that with our first step of land acknowledgement, we can move towards educating ourselves and others about indigenous communities and their rich and diverse culture and create a meaningful relationship with them as well.
The chalice is a symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. This particular chalice is a symbol of our community. When our church has had to evacuate for fire danger, I've taken this chalice with me. We took this chalice with us to Temple Adat Shalom when we worshiped there during our construction project. We have taken this chalice with us to worship in the park. And this chalice has been here with me in this space in my home that holds our Sunday worship during the pandemic. But even though it's here with me, it is not mine. It's ours. It belongs to our community. And our chalice flame burns bright, as do the love and joy that we share, no matter where or how we are gathered. The words of our call to worship come from the Reverend Gordon McKeeman. We summon ourselves from the demands and delights of the daily round, from the dirty dishes and unwaxed floors, from unmowed grass and untrimmed trees, from all incompleteness and not yet startedness, from the unholy and the unresolved. We summon ourselves to attend to our vision of peace and justice, of cleanliness and health, of delight and devotion, of the lovely and the holy, of who we are and what we can do. We summon the power of tradition and the exhilaration of newness, the wisdom of the ages and the knowing of the very young. We summon beauty, eloquence, poetry, and music to be the bearers of our dreams. We would open our eyes, our ears, our minds, our hearts to the amplest dimensions of life. We rejoice in manifold promises and possibilities. Let us worship together. You're invited to join in singing.
Gather the Spirit, harvest the power. Our separate lives will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of this hour. Our trials in this light appear all the same. Gathered in gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit of heart and mind. Seeds for the sowing are laid in store, nurtured in love and conscience refined, with body and spirit united once more. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Gather the Spirit growing in all, drawn by the moon and fed by the sun, winter to spring and summer to fall, the chorus of life resounding once more. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again.
Our Sunday worship is the shared spiritual practice of our community, and we tend to the congregation during this time by sharing and honoring our joys and sorrows. If you'd like to share a joy or sorrow with the congregation this morning, now is the time for sharing in the chat box. These don't get spoken out loud, they don't become part of the recording. If you'd like to send me a confidential note about your joy or sorrow, or to make a prayer request, please email me. I'll put my email address in the chat box. But this morning, we begin by lighting a candle of sorrow in recognition that yesterday was the Transgender Day of Remembrance, marking the numerous transgender lives that have been lost to violence this year so far. We have already lost 375 transgender or gender non-conforming lives to violence around the globe. And 47 of those lives were here in the United States. And let's remember, sadly, that Black and Latinx transgender people face disproportionate violence. May we all join in the struggle to eliminate harassment, discrimination, and violence against transgender people. Our story is called Stone Soup, and it is retold and illustrated by John Muth.
3 monks, Hawk, Lock, and Sue, traveled along a mountain road. They talked about cat whiskers, the color of the sun, and giving. "What makes one happy, Sue?" asked Hawk, the youngest monk. Old Sue, who was the wisest, said, "Let's find out." The sound of the bell brought their gaze to the rooftops of a village below. They could not see from so high above that the village had been through many hard times. Famine, floods, and war had made the villagers weary and untrusting of strangers. They had even become suspicious of their neighbors. The villagers worked hard, but only for themselves. There was a farmer, a tea merchant, a scholar, a seamstress, a doctor, a carpenter, and many others, but they had little to do with one another. When the monks reached the foot of the mountain, the villagers disappeared into their houses. No one came to the gates to greet them, and when the people saw them enter the village, they closed their windows tight. The monks knocked on the door of the first house. There was no answer. Then the house went dark. They knocked on the second door, and the same thing happened. It happened again and again, from one house to the next. "These people do not know happiness," they all agreed. "But today," said Sue, his face bright as the moon, "we will show them how to make stone soup." They gathered twigs and branches and made a fire. They placed a small tin pot on top and filled it with water from the village well. A brave little girl who had been watching came to them. "What are you doing?" she asked. "We are gathering twigs," said Locke. "We are making a fire," said Hawk. "We are making stone soup, and we need 3 round smooth stones," said Sue. The little girl helped the monks look around the courtyard until they had found just the right ones. Then they put them in the water to cook. "These stones will make excellent soup," said Sue. "But this very small pot won't make much, I'm afraid." "My mother has a bigger pot," said the girl. The little girl ran home. As she started to take a pot, her mother asked what she was doing. "The 3 strangers are making soup from stones," she said. "They need our biggest pot." Said the girl's mother. "Stones are easy to come by. I'd like to learn how to do that." The monks poked the coals. As smoke drifted up, the neighbors peered out from their windows. The fire in the large pot in the middle of the village was a true curiosity. One by one, the people of the village came out to see just what this stone soup was. "Of course, old-style stone soup should be well seasoned with salt and pepper," said Hawk. "That is true," said Locke, as he stirred the giant pot filled with water and stones. "But we have none." "I have some salt and pepper," said the scholar, his eyes big with curiosity. He disappeared and came back with salt and pepper and even a few other spices. Sue took a taste. "The last time we had soup stones of this size and color, carrots made the broth very sweet." "Carrots?" said a woman from the back. "I may have a few carrots, but just a few." And off she ran. She returned with as many carrots as she could carry and dropped them in the pot. "Do you think it would be better with onions?" asked Hawk. "Oh yes, maybe an onion would taste great," said a farmer, and he hurried off. He returned in a moment with 5 big onions, and he dropped them into the bubbling soup. "Now that's a fine soup," he said. The villagers all nodded their heads, as the smell was very agreeable. "But if only we had some mushrooms," said Sue, rubbing his chin. Several villagers licked their lips. A few dashed away and returned with fresh mushrooms, noodles, pea pods, and cabbage. Something magical began to happen among the villagers. As each person opened their heart to give, the next person gave even more, and as this happened, the soup grew richer and smelled more delicious. "I imagine the emperor would suggest we add dumplings," said one villager. "And bean curd," said another. "And what about cloud ear and mung beans and yams?" cried some others. "And taro root and winter melon and baby corn," cried other villagers. "Garlic, ginger root, soy sauce, lily buds! I have some! I have some!" people cried out, and off they ran, returning with all they could carry. The monks stirred, and the pot bubbled. How good it smelled! How good it would taste! How giving the villagers had become! At last the soup was ready. The villagers gathered together. They brought rice and steamed buns. They brought lychee nuts and sweet cakes. They brought tea to drink, and they lit lanterns. Every one sat down to eat. They had not been together for a feast like this for as long as anyone could remember. After the banquet, they told stories, sang songs, and celebrated long into the night. Then they unlocked their doors and took the monks into their homes and gave them very comfortable places to sleep. In the gentle spring morning, everyone gathered together near the willows to say farewell. "Thank you for having us as your guests," said the monks. "You have been most generous." "Thank you," said the villagers. "With the gifts you have given, we will always have plenty. You have shown us that sharing makes us all richer." "And to think," said the monks, "to be happy is as simple as making stone soup."
Today is our 10th annual Chalice Soup celebration, when we celebrate the founding of this congregation and the many things we are able to accomplish together. When we have met in person, we have traditionally made soup together this morning, each bringing something to contribute, just as we heard in our story. This is our second year celebrating Chalice Soup only online, and our second year of pandemic, though the vaccines have made a dramatic and welcome difference in our lives. Whatever emotions you are carrying this morning, let this be a time of celebration, that people do come together to accomplish amazing things. And one of those things is the very existence of this congregation. This congregation was founded in 1984 as the Unitarian Universalist Inland North County Fellowship, UUINCF. In 1989, a group split from UUINCF to form Chalice Church. And for 11 years, there were two UU congregations in the Poway, Rancho Bernardo area. Eventually, the two congregations reunited, and on January 1st, 2000, Chalice Unitarian Universalist Congregation was formed. So we celebrated our 20th anniversary last year. In loving gratitude for the joy and wonder that is our gathered religious community, we honor our founding members this morning.
Forward through the ages in unbroken line, move the faithful spirits at the call divine. Gifts in differing measure, hearts of one accord.
I became a minister because I love church, but I recognize that not everyone does. And of course, the majority of people in the United States don't belong to religious community anymore. It can feel like a paradox that religious community can be such a source of inspiration and strength for so many of us. And at the same time, it can be an indicator of what is going wrong in so many people's lives. The critical issue is if your religious community is encouraging you to be thoughtful and to ask questions, or if your religious community is teaching you to believe what you're told and to not ask questions. I feel like so much of what I see going wrong in the world stems from people lacking meaning in their lives, lacking true connection. And so they're vulnerable to cult-like behaviors. And we see people terrorizing school board members about mask policies and protesting outside vaccination sites. People unable to distinguish reality from lies because they're being taught to believe what they're told. Healthy religious community like ours help keep us grounded and centered. Here we are inspired, we hope, to be thoughtful, informed citizens, to be involved, to ask meaningful questions, to try and live our values. When we are hurting, we have a community of people to turn to. When we are in hard times, we have a community of people to lean on. When we need strengthening to face the challenges of daily life, we have a community of shared values to draw strength from. I have loved church for a long time, but the pandemic has shown me anew the important role that healthy religious community plays in people's lives. Our work in the coming months will be to slowly, when we feel safe, begin to meet in person again and to be together face to face. Our next step in that direction will be an in-person social gathering at Chalice the afternoon of Sunday, December 12th. Masks will be required. Just a time to relax and have some fun together. You'll get an email about that tomorrow, and it will be in the December newsletter. We do need people to sign up to help out, so please do that. The pandemic has knocked us all down, but our Chalice community is still here for us, still strong. And in the coming months, we will find the joy of adding in-person gatherings back into our communal life. And just a reminder that worship will also stay online even when we're back worshiping in person, because we know many of you appreciate the ability to worship from home. Now, please join in singing.
Always tomorrow, lean
The Sunday offering is an expression of the generosity that makes our congregational life possible. As Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron writes, generosity is an activity that loosens us up. By offering whatever we can, $1, a flower, a word of encouragement, we are training in letting go. Please text your donation to Chalice. If you haven't texted a donation before, know that once you text the amount, you'll get a reply with a link to follow to enter your credit card information. If you've already entered this information previously when you've donated, you won't need to enter it again. If your Sunday donation is part of your pledge payment, please be sure to indicate the word pledge after the dollar amount, and also know that you can make a text donation anytime, doesn't need to be just during the worship hour. The phone number will be on screen in a moment, and I'll also put it in the chat box. Please give generously. Please join in dedicating our offering with words of affirmation. As Unitarian Universalists, we gather to affirm and promote acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. So last year, for Chalice's 20-year anniversary, our congregants who are in a band together called Grunion Run revised one of their songs, a song they had written actually in Chalice's early days, revised it to commiserate about how much we miss being at Chalice together now because of the pandemic. It's called the Chalice UU Blues. And we're replaying it this morning now to commiserate about our current inability to worship together, still figuring out the technology of in-person worship. But I just wanted to introduce it with a reminder that it was written about last year. So some of the lyrics make a little more suited that context. So we'll hope you'll laugh and enjoy this morning.
We have this little church on the north side of town. It's where the UUs all meet when they want to get down. We love the property and the people too, 'cause when we get together, it's like a holy zoo. But lately there's been something keeping us apart. It's just two little words, but it's breaking my heart. Can't seem to get back to Chalice. How we try, can't seem to get back to Chalice. Wanna die, can't seem to get back to Chalice. Let me tell you the news. We got the COVID-19 blues. Well, it started in March and then April and May, but we were hopeful it would soon go away. June, July, August seems we just can't win, and I miss church so much I just want to break in. September, October, November, wow, if it's like this for Christmas, I'm gonna have me a cow. Can't seem to get back to Chalice, how we tried, can't seem to get back to Chalice. Wanna die, can't seem to get back to Chalice. Let me tell you the news, we got the COVID-19 blues. Well, we're learning all kinds of new COVID-y tricks, but it's harder and harder for us to get our kicks. I'm always on Zoom, but I don't seem to go fast, and for some reason can't seem to make ice cream last. I have 5 different masks for when I'm out and about, but sometimes I want to take them off and shout. We all shout, can't seem to get back to Chalice. How we try, can't seem to get back to Chalice. Wanna die, can't seem to get back to Chalice. Let me tell you the news, we got the COVID-19 blues. Well, I know my song is full of negative energy, and I hope you haven't started to misunderstand me. I know we'll get back, babe, we will not fail, cause the next day at Chalice is like the Holy Grail. Until then, chin up and I'll see you online. Hold me in your heart and you'll be in mine. Can't seem to get back to Chalice, how we try, can't seem to get back to Chalice. Wanna die, can't seem to get back to Chalice. Let me tell you the news, we got the COVID-19 coronavirus social distancing blues. Yeah!
I'll let you all just savor that for a moment. I know many of us had a difficult week taking in the news of the Kyle Rittenhouse case in particular. And so I just want to remind us, as we're here this morning, celebrating what people can do when we come together, that making big change is one of the things people can do when we come together. So as we grieve and as we feel anger and disappointment, let's also feel called to join with others in making change. We can't affect much change on our own, and in our individualistic world, we've lost some skills of community building, but we want to look for people we can join with to make changes to laws, reform, or whatever you think the appropriate action is. And we have our own groups in San Diego County working for police reform. So yeah, I hope you can be heartened by knowing that we can make a difference. So I'd like to invite us into a time of prayer, a posture that Unitarian Universalists might like to use, that I encourage, is placing your left hand over your heart in recognition of the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and lift a hand up in acknowledgement of our interdependence and our connection to each other and all of existence. The words of our prayer come from Reverend Ariel Aronson Eves. We want to pray for justice, but how can we? In a world where the same courts that let a white boy walk would sentence a Black boy to life in prison or even death. We want to pray for peace, but how can we? In a world where the ideal of peace is sometimes used to silence healthy conflict and necessary grieving. We want to pray for love, but how can we? In a world where such a feeling is sometimes used to justify abuse. So instead, we pray for patience, that we might be present with all that we are feeling in this moment, without trying to rush through it. We pray for tenderness, that we might be gentle with ourselves and with others. And we pray for courage, that we might seek and speak truth. Patience, tenderness, courage. For these things we pray.
This is the ancient Persian story of the Simurgh, originally told in the 12th century by Farid ud-Din Attar and retold by Jorge Luis Borges in the Book of Imaginary Things. The Simurgh is a benevolent, mythical, flying creature, an immortal bird that nests in the branches of the tree of knowledge, far away in a distant land. One day, the other birds learn that the Simurgh has dropped one of his splendid feathers. These birds have been living in anarchy, and they are tired of it, tired of chaos, struggle, and confusion. They know there must be a better way, and they need the wisdom and guidance of a great leader. So they decide to venture off to find the Simurgh. They know that this journey will be long and difficult, since the great benevolent bird's castle lies way out in a distant mountain range that forms a ring around the earth. But it's got to be worth the journey to find deliverance from the chaos that surrounds them. A better world must be possible. So this group of birds heads off to see the Simurgh, and right away, many of the birds lose heart. The nightingale bails. He can't bear to be apart from his beloved rose. The parrot wants to go right back into the cage in which he's lived his whole life. The partridge cannot do without the comfort of her home in the hills. The heron can't stand being away from the marsh, nor the owl away from his ruins. But finally, certain of them set out on the perilous venture. They cross 7 valleys, 7 seas, each one with an alarming name. The next to last sea was named Bewilderment, and the last one, Annihilation. Many of the original pilgrims desert. The journey takes a deep toll on the rest of the travelers. They are exhausted, depleted, and at the end of this arduous journey, only 30 birds are left. These birds were frightened and tired, but they kept moving together, and they finally reached the great peak that the great Simurgh bird is said to live upon. And the birds land. They prepare to behold their king, to receive their answers, to rest into the end of chaos. But there on that mountain peak, there is no great mythical bird. It's just them on that peak, just 30 birds. And this is because they are the Simurgh. because it turns out that the word Simurg means 30 birds. And the Simurg is each of them and all of them together.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah. We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh yeah, yeah, 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 yeah.
Before we close the service, I'd like to remind newcomers to please use the link in the chat box to add your name to our email list. Our closing words come from Reverend Maureen Killoran. They are called closing words for hard times. We have heard them before in these past year and a half. No matter how weak or frightened we may feel, we each have gifts that can make a difference in the world. In this coming week, may you do at least one thing to support the broken, to welcome the stranger, to celebrate what is worthy, to do the work of justice and love. Be strong, be connected. Each day act, so you may be a little more whole. Blessed be. You're invited to close our time together by singing the well. Then we have a quick announcement afterwards, and then everyone is invited to coffee hour. Go in peace.